I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
And Trustee Bond.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum this evening. Move on to public comment or public participation, public comment period. This is the time in the meeting when any member of the public can address the board on any topic. Just come down to the podium, and if you can write your name and address for the record, and we'll go from there.
Well, my name is Steve Goals. I own the Merlin shop that's in Montgomery. We're at 1947 US Route 30. And I see there's a proposal to build a Christian Brothers right next door to me. And we're a full-service automotive shop, same thing Christian Brothers does. I've been in this area all my life, born in '61, been here ever since. And obviously Christian Brother is an out-of-town, out-of-state automotive shop. And at one time I did look at it as a franchise, also looked at A1 Automotive. And even with those franchises, I wouldn't have picked to build right next door to any other automotive shop, even like, we're right across from the Walmart, but the Firestone that's over there also. You know, I just don't see a common sense of building another full-service automotive shop right next door to another one. And that's what I'm here to kind of oppose, that there's got to be other land that they could build on. You know, competition is great, what makes the world go round. But for me, I don't want it right next door, my backyard. I mean, they'd be 1957, I think, US Route 30, we're 1947, right next door. So I'm opposed to that. So that's what I got. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board? All right. So we'll move on to the consent. We only have 2 items this evening. I'll read those and entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the village board meeting of January 4th and the accounts payable through January 18th.
So moved. Second.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. Items for separate action, we have PC recommendation 2017-014A, special use and public hearing in consideration for for an amendment to the special use for a plan unit development to allow a second motor vehicle service located at Orchard Crossing subdivision. This is the Christian Brothers Automotive Corporation. That'll turn it over to Director Young for a summary.
Thank you. This item is before you tonight as a recommendation from the Plan Commission to allow a second automotive use within the Orchard Crossing Shopping Center. There was a public hearing earlier this month, and the Plan Commission was unanimous in their recommendation to allow for this text amendment to allow a second automotive use within this center.
Did anybody speak at the public hearing?
I was not personally at
Okay.
the public hearing. I believe that Trustee Spurling was. I don't think that there was anybody that spoke.
Okay.
There was no one that spoke on this issue.
Okay. All right. Any questions of staff? No, this is just the recommendation of Plan Commission. This isn't the ordinance, the approval ordinance, so. Right.
This is for approval of the PC's recommendation?
Yeah, this is just on the recommendation.
Acceptance of the recommendation.
Second.
It's the first, please. Trustee Youngerman.
Yeah.
Yay.
All right. And Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just on the recommendation. Item B we have is actually the ordinance 1799, which is amending the PUD to allow for this use. And so this is first reading. We won't take action on the actual ordinance this evening, but would open it up for comments from the board, or if staff has anything else to add.
I just have one item to add, that since the time of the public hearing with the Plan Commission, the site plan was adjusted slightly to move some parking. It's in conformance with the zoning ordinance. There are no setback variances required. So I just wanted to point that out to the board, that if you go forward and you do see this at your next meeting for approval, the site plan will be slightly different than the one that was reviewed by the Plan Commission, but there are no zoning, substantial zoning changes or variances that would be required with the modified site plan.
Okay.
Could we take a moment and clarify what makes this a special use?
Any type of automotive use is a special use within the zoning district of B2, which is this center. And it's also stated in the PUD agreement that it would be a special use.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but this first recommendation is to allow a second
Correct.
automotive use.
That's correct.
And then the next one we'll look at is special use for automotive, correct?
That's correct.
Would it be accurate to say then that we'd have two special uses side by side?
Well, we have a text amendment to the original PUD, which would make a second special use for an automotive use within this shopping center, if that makes sense. So
No, I lost you there.
it's a PUD amendment. It's a text amendment to the PUD that would allow a second special use of automotive use within the center.
So do you need, so maybe for our attorney, but, so the PUD is actually probably the entire Walmart
It's not the
property?
entire Walmart. It's
Okay.
basically the strip of lots that are fronting Route 30. Walmart itself
Yeah.
is not part of this PUD.
Okay. So this PUD, this strip of outlots here, was there any assurances or anything given to the owner of the Merlins that there wouldn't be any other uses, since now we're adding one?
Not by the village. You know, we never make representations that zoning won't at some point change. I don't know about his relationship with his purchaser, the individual he bought his land from.
Who owns this? Is this Walmart property or somebody else? Who owns it?
No, it's the McVickers group
McVickers?
that developed
Okay.
the lots.
Is it a 9-bay like the picture shows?
Yes.
Do they have a franchisee? I noticed by the thing here, it's got every vice president and all that, but it doesn't
Company,
say.
my understanding is it's a company-owned store.
It's a what?
Company-owned store.
The own store, okay.
I think Mr. Thompson from the development side would be able to answer some of the questions.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? The project we developed, McVickers Development, with my partner John McVickers, approximately 10 years ago. You are correct, the PUD is just for the outlots on the fronting of the 30, and also is on the back piece by the Walmart, but not the Walmart itself. It was a special use, and I believe when the deal was done with Tuffy, and originally there was a holdback period of, I think it was like 18 months, that there would be no further competition on that site for any type of automotive. So it was addressed. I think it's been, I don't know, maybe 3 years now, more or less, that the store has been open. So we feel it's proper time that competition's okay. And if you have any questions directly for Christian Brothers, both the engineer and director of development are here to answer those for you.
Awesome, thank you.
To whom does the special use fall then? Is it to the future store owner or to the, I'm confused
Goes
about
to
it.
the
I can answer that. The special use runs with the land. So once it is granted, it exists on the land regardless of who owns the property or who operates the facility. If it's a Christian Brothers now, but in 20 years it changes to something else, it still runs with the land.
Now, that's somewhat unusual in that some special uses disappear when the business changes.
Not typically. Most land use decisions are do not take into account who owns the land. Annexation agreements sometimes can. And we've had some temporary uses, or temporary special uses, like up north on Lake Street, I think we had a couple in particular. Yeah, the mulch sort of things. But most of the time, that's not the case.
Thank you.
And if I can offer one other thing, I think you had asked a question that maybe Rich tried to answer a different question. He was going through the process of what we're doing right now, but I do believe that the existing facility, the existing automotive, was also a special use. In other words, it went through that process as well back in the day.
Okay. So this ordinance 1799 is actually to update the PUD to allow for a second motor vehicle service in this area, and then the next two actually relate to specifically Christian Brothers.
That's correct.
And
yes.
which is the special use for automotive, which sounds doubly confusing, but I get it. Makes some sense.
Does this allow for a second use or for any future use? Does it essentially approve this use for that land,
It would approve it for that center, or there's,
for the full facility?
yes, there are a few remaining outlots that have not been developed, so technically it's for any of those remaining vacant lots.
But the next step that you potentially could take, although it's probably still first reading, would be to grant it to this specific lot. So when you take the first action, you're opening up a second automotive use anywhere in the PUD. The second action you take then locks it down on this site.
Okay.
Forgive me, but I didn't get to attend the Plan Commission meeting. Why did the Plan Commissioners feel that it was a good idea to have two of the same thing right next to each other?
They did not feel that it was inappropriate in as much as it's simply competition. It's not a noxious use. It doesn't pose any harm to other surrounding businesses or residents, and they felt it was an acceptable use within the center.
I mean, what I'm thinking in my head is I'm trying to prevent the Mattress Firm effect, where they pop up on every corner and they're two or three within sight of each other.
And that's not a special use, so those could
That's
Those could
correct.
go up
No,
anywhere.
but in general, I mean, you know how the residents are, and they're going to say, why do we need this? Why, we have one right here. Why do we need
Well,
another?
it's just like
Yeah,
in
if
many
I-
centers, if you had a Burger King and a McDonald's, or you had a Popeye's chicken and a Brown's chicken. It's no different than if you had a Walgreens across the street from a CVS. It's the same type of situation in our.
Go ahead, Attorney Anderson.
Also, the other thing to remember is you need to take into account whether or not this meets the standards for granting a special use or an amendment to the PUD. One of those standards is not, do you like it? It is not, does it foster competition? They're based on land use criterion, and that's what the Plan Commission took into account, and quite frankly, that's what y'all are supposed to take into account. You have more power some of the time. You know, we often talk about annexation agreements where you can dictate a lot more than that. But here, your decision is not about whether it's appropriate to have two of these uses. It's whether or not this site is appropriate for this type of use.
Now, one of those questions, if I recall correctly, is does it damage or harm the property values of adjacent property owners?
Yes.
And the decision was that this would not?
That's correct.
When I mean, if you think along Douglas Road, we have an AutoZone, you know, we have O'Reilly, and then we have Advanced.
Yeah.
With
But
three,
they're not right next to each other. They're a little bit down the street.
True, but, yeah, I mean, I get the point, but I also think in this age and where we live, and I would think that Firestone being, you know, 3/4 of a mile away from here, or half a mile, is just as close competition-wise as the lot next door to it.
and Walmart's right across, I mean,
Right.
literally across the street.
So, I mean, I get there's a scenario where you might get a potential client going from one building to the other to negotiate against the two and whatnot. I'm sure that might happen, but also I'd like to think of it, if it was reversed and Christian Brothers was here, that we would be granting the same thing for Merlin's to move in, to provide, obviously, the competition, but that variety of services for the village. And I don't know that I don't know that we could quantify the impact to one specific property, especially when the agreements that Mr. Thompson referenced indicated an 18-month kind of a startup period where they would get to start up their business, and so they don't get hit with another motor vehicle use right away. I could see that being hard on the business. But being an established company, I think you would definitely have the edge over somebody else moving in.
If I recall correctly, at Planning Commission, one of the planning commissioners did ask if Merlin had any issues with this, and no one came to the public hearing to speak. So that was something that they took to think that there was no issue with that. You remember that and somebody got up, somebody asked.
Somebody did ask that.
Yeah.
However, I did stop and talk with Mr. Goals. I think it was a couple days after that. And he was not aware that this could happen, that a second full-service auto facility could be put in there. He was under the impression that it would not be changed. And he had no idea that this was happening. And that's why I asked him to come tonight and to express what he had to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was surprised when I stopped in to tell him what was going on.
Wouldn't he fall in the category of an affected property owner for special use hearing notification?
Sure.
Yeah, do we notify for a public hearing, so he would have been notified?
Yes.
So, Attorney Anderson, can you just clarify for me? I know you said we have to vote based on whether.
Well, I never tell anybody how they have
Okay,
to
well,
vote.
that's true. That's right. I'm sorry. Just say that again, what you were
Sure.
saying.
What I'm encouraging you to do is follow your ordinances, which is that if you look in the Plan Commission report and the staff report, they'll give you criterion for either granting or denying either an amendment to the PUD or the granting of the special use. Those standards are typically land use based. They're not business based. In other words, whether you want a business or not, or whether or not it promotes or detracts from competition from another business. It's about traffic. It's about property values. It's about lighting. It's, those sorts of criterion, more objective, if you will. That's what I was trying to say.
So, for me, I'm having some issue. I just don't feel like this makes sense.
That's why you're elected, so that's your job,
That's
not
what I'm
mine.
saying. So, that's my opinion. It just doesn't make sense to put the same type of business right next to each other or even within a close proximity. And as was mentioned, Walmart is there, so now you're going to have 3 within a small area. Okay, I'm not the marketing research expert or an expert on economics and competition and all that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we all remember
You
when,
can vote yes or no.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that it seems like based on the research that maybe it wouldn't be in the best interest of the company, but it's also not, I don't think that falls on us to decide that because I don't have the data. But if we start with this instance and say, well, there's already one in this area, so we're going to turn you down, then what do we do if CVS wants to go in across the street from Walgreens? Then do we say, whoa, we have to protect them? And then if another restaurant wants to open up next to, Niners, do we start turning down different restaurants? This is one specific example, but think broadly.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't start telling them no for all of that stuff. I mean, that's the competition. Now, I also don't think we need any more mattress firms, but also, we can't do exclusionary zoning to not allow them to open up, especially one like that. They don't need special use.
right,
And previously, it came before the board for a liquor license, and it was suggested not to allow them to move down Douglas Road because it was going to impact another liquor store that was down there. And we voted to approve it because we don't really get into the favoritism end of the business of saying, we protect you, we don't protect you, it's fair competition, and it was right down the street.
when O'Reilly's went in, we all decided, what are they doing, the third automotive in 3 blocks? And yet they did enough, and all 3 are doing well, because I use 2 of the 3, and their marketing showed that it covered enough that all 3 would be happy. And I couldn't believe that, because I don't work on my own car, but these people really So the automotive works, to think of Merlin, I think of mufflers. And Firestone Tires, I think of tires. Christian Brothers, I don't know what they are.
Brandy.
But it's automotive everything, I guess. But I don't think the competition is bad for them. I think all of them got their niche. And then Merlin, you're open how many days a week? 6, 7? They're only open, according to the book, they're only open 5 days, and Saturday only half the time or something like that, half of the year.
First 180 days, that's all.
Okay. It's closed. Okay. So that's what I'm saying is you got the advantage on the days if you open Saturday, Sunday compared to those guys right away. That's kind of a, not getting nitpicky on the times and everything, but you do have an advantage here. Plus, it's like a restaurant. You put one restaurant and more people come, put 2 there, more people come to them. And I think this is going to be the same way. People will probably come and get a quote from you and a quote from Christian Brothers, but that's not going to hurt you because they may not ever stopped in the first place. So just one of those. That's the way I look at it. But you're right.
Question.
Our objective is not anything to do with.
In response to Trustee Marisek's comment about the liquor license and that, but I also remember a time when we didn't give a liquor license to a Shell station because we thought that there were enough liquor stores.
That's correct. And just, this is another example where sometimes you have more power and sometimes you have less power. Liquor licenses, you have almost complete power over because you have no open or available licenses. And in fact, that's why we keep it that way. So you have much more discretion.
But there was nothing in that gentleman's background that should have prevented him from getting a liquor license. But we said, okay, enough is enough as far as liquor licenses there, and so we denied it.
You have that power in that case.
And so you can talk about the liquor license going down Douglas Road, but then also remember, you've got to see it from both sides, that you also voted to not allow a liquor license to a gentleman that he had originally pulled the board, and we said, yes, we're going to grant this, and then ultimately the votes were there that it wasn't. So it just, I want
Yeah,
you
I
to
think-
see both sides of the coin.
No, and I think liquor license, and I get the point you're making, liquor licenses are a lot different. It's not a zoning use, it's an actual liquor license that we would issue. Back to this, I did want to introduce you and give you a chance to speak.
My name is Curtis Kane. I'm the head of development and for Christian Brothers Automotive out of Houston, Texas. There are some things that, as you guys are discussing and trying to do a good job of doing the right thing for your community, I wanted to help clarify. I appreciate Steve being here. I know this has got to be difficult for him, thinking that we're invading, and it's not intended. There is a franchisor, Christian Brothers, and then there is a franchisee that will be for this location. We don't own 180 stores across the country. There is a local owner that will be in place that will own the store, raise his family here. We hope he coaches girls softball. He should be a member of the community. I think that individual is already in place. I'm not at liberty to speak it, but we are a franchisor. We are not the same, I don't believe, as Merlin's. We've taken a look at his model. When you think of Merlin's, you think of mufflers. We don't do mufflers. We don't do body work. We don't do tires. We don't do heavy automotive. If somebody came to us with a catastrophic failure in an automobile, we would oftentimes simply ask them to go somewhere else or help them get there. If they couldn't get there, we would do our best to help them. Heavy automotive comprises about 1% of our work. Most of our work, if you drive a car these days, you know it's a mechanical marvel. It's a computer-generated four-wheel machine. I don't know how they operate. When I was a young man, I used to work on cars and actually held a mechanic's license in California when I was a kid. I owned a Lexus, had 114,000 miles on it, raised the hood 3 times. 2 batteries, and oh my goodness, what's in here? Never touched the car after that. So anymore, everything is computer-driven. Our mechanics are equipped with the latest equipment, diagnostic equipment. We're satellite linked to all the major manufacturers. When you bring your car in, you plug it into the computer. It talks to Detroit. And Detroit tells us that it needs a new code. We download a code from the internet, we repair the car with a computer. Most of that in the late model cars is what you do. I was told a few years ago that Mercedes-Benz had 38 onboard computers on one car. You can't work on those things anymore. So we feel that we're different than Merlin's. We actually believe that we would be synergistic. We will offer an oil change if you ask for one. We prefer not to do them. There's not much profit in it. It's a lot of work. Recycling can be an issue. We do it as a full-service automotive, and that if you brought your car and said, hey, I need you to take a look at the brakes, I've got a little hitch in my giddy-up, and while you're at it, change the oil. Well, we'll do all three. But we would prefer to send a quick lube to a quick lube store. If you came in with a transmission that was slipping, we might say, you know what, that's heavy automotive. There's a nice transmission shop we recommend. You need to take it there and get that rebuilt, because we're not going to tear it apart on the floor and rebuild it. Our floors are polished. We clean them with a Zamboni-style machine. All our fluids are recycled. We have a national contract that serves all of our fluids. Everything we use is biodegradable. Automotive is typically an environmental hazard, but we make it not one in our shop. If you drive a car, you're driving around a rolling ecological disaster waiting to happen. So when your car comes in, we do our best to contain all fluids. Everything is recycled, everything is contracted out, and then we clean up afterward. There are no washdowns anymore. We don't do that. Everything is recycled. Even our cleaning fluids are recycled along with any kind of automotive spill. All of our equipment is in our fluid containers or in double hole containers. We have a grease trap we put on our building as kind of like a double indemnity. If anything were to go wrong, we've got it covered in the shop. If it happened to spill in the shop, then we have almost like a second line of defense. And we cover 115% of all available fluid capacity in that grease trap. More than that, we're insured per occurrence. If there ever is a problem, we're insured up to $1 million per occurrence. We've been in operation since '82 and have 180 stores currently, and we've had zero issues ecologically. Zero, not a one. There's been no spills, no lawsuits, no problems. Our first store in existence was built in '82. About 3 years ago, I performed a second phase one on the property just to see where we were, and it came back as clean as the last one I did 3 months earlier. So we feel that we're different than Merlin's. We would hope that we would be good neighbors and we could actually send some things that we don't want to do his direction. We would hope that he would return the favor if there are things that he couldn't handle, and we had the computers and the equipment to do that. We'd love to be of help. I don't want to compete with Firestone. I don't want to compete with anything that has to do with automotive body repair, painting, welding. We don't put that equipment in the shops. Don't want to do it. Mufflers, Merlin sounds like a great place to go for that, and we would appreciate that. But I'm here to answer any questions. I'm really second string. I'm the head of the department, but Jonathan, who is the permit expediter and permit director, who works for me, is actually probably better at this than I am. But I'm a crusty old construction guy who's built these buildings for about the last 15 years, and I know them inside and out. I can answer any questions you may have about them or about what goes on inside. I think we're different. I hope we would be a friend to Merlin's and Steve. We hope that we would offer good competition in your environment, and we would give you something different if you had a car that needed a different kind of repair, what we call upscale automotive, more diagnostic based. That really tends more to who we are. I gave you a little handout. It speaks pretty truly of who we are. Those photos are actual. We're not smart enough to be coy. That building, that 9-bay, is the same building I've built a lot of times. I think I built store number 27, and we're on 180, so I know most of them by heart. As she flips through the pictures, I can tell you which store they are and which state. But those are pictures of our actual stores, where we are, what we do, and we feel like we're kind of different in the marketplace. That's why we thought this was a good location. We didn't come in to be ultra competitive. We came in to be a help to the community, to put a franchisee, in place so we could have a family have a good job, employ some good mechanics, and do a great job. So I'm open to any questions you may have.
You made me a lot more comfortable, and I think it probably made him more comfortable too, unless he knew all that beforehand. I think that's.
So, Mr. Kane, when, at the Plan Commission, Jonathan Wakefield was there, and I spoke with him briefly after the presentation, and I specifically asked for this meeting if you would please give us a list of your services so that I could know or understand what is making you so different compared to Merlin's. So if you can please run through that for me, I'd really appreciate it.
Like I said, about 1% of our work is what you would typically call full service or heavy automotive, which would be rebuilding engines, transmissions, differentials, heavy repair work. It's not something we do. Again, we're heavy diagnostic. We do some things like brakes, shocks, tune-ups, no tires.
So the diagnostics, that has to do with the onboard computers?
Pardon me?
The diagnostics would be if there's something going on with the onboard computers?
I also brought some, well, actually, we have, you'd be surprised, some of the scan tools that we have to purchase, a great number of computers, maybe typically for a Ford or a Chrysler. Chrysler, in fact, and I think Ford does as well, they actually count us as if we were a shop for their company. And we download directly from Ford or Chrysler the codes and diagnostics for the automobile to reprogram the computers on the car. And a lot of our equipment, mechanic these days has thousands of dollars worth of scan tools, computer scan tools in his toolbox. One of them we ship to the shop is 10 grand, I know, because I've had to handle it. We do mostly automotive computer diagnostic, check engine lights, some vehicle repairs, brakes, electric systems, AC services, drivetrain, and suspension. I brought a copy here for you. Are you Teresa?
Yes.
Yes, he mentioned you, said he had a
Perfect.
good conversation.
Thank you.
And that would help with that. So we do feel that we are different. Like I said, we don't want to do certain kinds of repairs. They're just not in our forte. We don't make our money there.
No, and I do appreciate the information and kind of discussing, how you guys might be different. But I also don't feel like that's the standards that we have to approve this on. That the special use should be granted if it meets these criteria. I think it's good information to have, but I don't think that at least in my opinion, wouldn't sway me not to support it. But I do appreciate it. Any other questions while he's up, or?
No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Call the vote.
Well, yeah, we're not voting on the ordinance.
We have the other Plan Commission
Okay.
recommendation, item C.
So this is item B. We'll vote on this at a future meeting. And then I'll move on to item C, which is Plan Commission recommendation. It's 2017-014B, and this is a special use for Christian Brothers at this site. And so, staff have anything else to add?
No, sir.
All right. Any other discussion from the board? Is there a motion to accept the Plan Commission recommendation?
Motion. Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
No.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
All right, that carries 4-1, thank you. And then ordinance D is, item D, ordinance 1800. This is granting the special use for motor vehicle services at Orchard Crossing Planning and Development, and that is for Christian Brothers. We have first reading of that tonight. Anybody have anything else to add at this time? Questions that you'd like from staff? We'll vote on this at a future meeting, hopefully the one in 2 weeks. Or is it 3 weeks from today, February 12th, 2 weeks? But if you have any questions between now and then for staff or the petitioner, please get that in so they can be prepared for that meeting. 3 weeks. Yeah, it's long. Okay. Anything else?
February 12th.
All right. I do appreciate everybody coming this evening. We will take action on this at a future meeting, very likely the February 12th meeting. Thank you. All right, move on to item E. We have well number 8, water treatment plant, cation exchange, media replacement. Director Hoppenstedt?
Yes, thank you. Our cation exchange water treatment plant, well 8 on the east side of town, is in need of media exchange replacement. As such, bids were received, opened, and tabulated for the work done on January 16th. Representatives from EEI, the village, and the contractors, 2 contractors who bid on the project, were in attendance. And the project included 4 mandatory bid alternates, of which we are recommending item 2A, which includes a baseline and post-construction radiological survey, given that the media has the potential to contain radiological components and just make sure that that contamination doesn't exist in the facility after the media has been exchanged. So the base bid for the project, is, well, the apparent low bidder is Global Water Services LLC out of Mount Vernon, Iowa. The base bid of the project was $108,900, and then the additional cost of $8,700 for the item 2A, which I explained the alternate of the radiological survey. Puts the entire project at $117,600, which is just slightly above the engineer's estimate for the project. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain those now.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions for Todd?
Did you check to see where have they done something in this area? You checked the references, I'm sure, but the guy's coming from Iowa, he probably doesn't have a lot around here.
Yeah, to be
Or
quite
Pete,
honest,
maybe.
I know that the reference checks were done, but I don't have that information in front of me, and I can't recall off the top of my head. But I do know that Engineering Enterprises has worked with this contractor in the past, and they have received good feedback.
Okay.
In fact, I can't recall the community it was, but the department commented that they were very professional and clean in their work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Awesome. Any other questions? You guys want to go real deep with cation exchange? We can do that.
Bring in a PowerPoint.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And I'm sure Pete has a PowerPoint ready to roll on this. All right, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
And Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you both. Item F, we have ordinance 1797. This is appointing Amalgamated Bank as bond paying agent for the 2008, 2011, 13, and 14 bonds. This is a waiver of first, passage on the second. Director Van Voren.
Thank you, President Brawley. This ordinance would move the paying agent duties to Amalgamated Bank. They already provide services for us for the 2017 general obligation bonds that were issued last June. They also take care of our 2006 Lakewood Creek special assessment bonds, as well as the just sold 2018 Lakewood Creek assessment bonds. The only difference between this ordinance and the next ordinance is that instead of appointing Amalgamated, it appoints the village as the paying agent because the bonds were sold directly to a particular bank. And so instead of sending that to Amalgamated, it comes to us. There's only 1 year left on it, and we will pay that in December. So
Okay.
if there's any questions, I can answer that.
Awesome. Any questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Unless Justin has anything else to add on item G, which is ordinance 1798, I'll entertain a motion for that one.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
That carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have anything for discussion, anything new or unfinished? All right, future meetings, Plan Commission has been canceled, or will be canceled, and next Village Board meeting is Monday, February 12th at 7 p.m. Next, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for two purposes: acquisition of real property and the employment of an employee.
So
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded? Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.